The air in the darkroom smelled like old books and stale dreams. That's what I always liked about it. Or rather, I used to. Back when I was a wedding photographer, shooting film was my passion. There was something about letting chemicals do the talking that felt so much more genuine than just snapping a digital pic and having the image pop up on the screen immediately. It was an art form. I still have some of those old negatives stored away in boxes in the attic, the ones that still remain after the countless hours spent poring over them. And it's because of one of these negatives that I haven't slept in days. See, I wasn't just any photographer. I was the best damn wedding photographer in town. Every bride wanted me to capture their special day. I had a gift for making people look their best, even if they weren't. I made it my business to know my clients, to talk to them not just about their big day, but about their lives, to understand what made them tick. Then I wove that understanding into my images, creating pictures that were as much works of art as they were memories. Now, back then, I worked mostly with black and white film, which added a certain timeless quality to my photographs. But it also meant that I had to develop and print all my own shots. The process was long and tedious, but it was worth every minute. That's where the magic happened. That's where the image went from negative to positive. It was during this stage that I first noticed him. It was in the background of every shot, lurking just outside the frame. At first, I thought he was just a figment of my imagination, a trick of the light, or maybe just a guy who looked a bit like a skeleton. But the more I looked, the more I realized that he wasn't in every shot. He was in almost every shot. He was at the reception in the old town hall where the bride wore her grandmother's veil, and the groom was a retired military man. There he was, shrouded in darkness, his face obscured by shadows, standing directly behind the bride as she cut the cake. He was also at the lakeside ceremony where the bride was a vision in white lace and the groom, a poet. Again, he was there, hidden in the gloom, watching them exchange vows, his eyes fixed on the bride. And then there was the barn wedding, a rustic affair with mismatched chairs and centerpieces made of mason jars filled with wildflowers. Once again, he appeared behind the bride as she danced with her father, his presence like a chill wind on the back of her neck. In every photo, he was there, yet none of the brides had mentioned seeing him. It was as if he were a ghost, a specter haunting their happiness. But how could this be? I thought he must have been joking. But when I looked again, he was still there. So I did what any rational person would do. I called the brides. The first two didn't remember anyone being behind their picture. They said they'd checked the photos already. And as for the barn wedding, the bride's mother told me that my client was out of town and unavailable. I thanked her for her time and hung up, feeling a cold knot of dread forming in my stomach. The brides didn't remember seeing him, but I knew what I'd seen. 3 weddings, 3 apparitions. Who was he, and why was he haunting these events? Was he a spirit, a stalker, a figment of my imagination? I needed answers, and I knew just the person to ask. Professor Evelyn Wright was a historian and paranormal investigator with a specialty in historical hauntings. Her office was crammed with books, photographs, and artifacts from her many investigations. When I showed her the prints, her eyes widened in surprise. "This is fascinating," she said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "You've stumbled onto something quite rare, Mr. Hayes. This is what we call spirit photography." Spirit photography was popular in the 19th century and early 20th century. It was when photographers claimed to be able to capture images of spirits and ghosts on photographic plates. The most famous practitioner was William H. Mumler, a Boston-based photographer who ran a very successful business. Mumler's pictures often showed spirits hovering around his subjects or even interacting with them. One of his most famous photographs, the Mumler ring, showed a group of 4 women, including medium Helen Viola, who claimed to have captured the image of Abraham Lincoln's ghost. The picture was widely publicized and helped to make Mumler a household name. But Mumler's methods were eventually exposed as a hoax. He was accused of using a double exposure technique to create his ghostly images and was even arrested for fraud. Despite the scandal, the public remained fascinated by spirit photography. After Mumler's death in 1904, other photographers around the world claimed to be able to produce similar results. Some, like Mumler, were exposed as frauds. Others, like Adolph Braun, were believed to have captured genuine spirits on film. Professor Wright believed that my photographs were in the same vein as Mumler's work. She suggested that I might be unknowingly capturing spirits that were drawn to the joy and celebration of the weddings I was photographing. I was skeptical, but I had to admit that her theory made more sense than anything else I'd heard. Maybe I was just looking at the photos the wrong way. Maybe there really were spirits drawn to the weddings. And maybe, just maybe, I was the one who was haunted, not the brides. I tried to put the incident out of my mind, but it was impossible. The images burned into my brain, and the brides started calling with complaints. They didn't like the fact that there was this dark figure in the background of their wedding photos. They wanted me to fix it. But how could I fix something that wasn't really there? I explained that it was either a trick of the light or a glitch in the film, but they weren't buying it. At first, it was just a few brides. But as word spread, more and more of my clients demanded refunds. Their complaints grew louder, more insistent, and soon I was getting threats. One afternoon, I came home from a shoot to find a box on my doorstep. Inside was a pair of muddy boots and a note. "Don't show yourself at the next wedding," it read. "We know your game." My blood ran cold. How did they know about the entity? Were they trying to warn me or threaten me? I couldn't tell. I felt trapped, like I was in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I had to do something, anything, to stop the madness. But what? I thought about telling the police. But what would I tell them? That a ghost was haunting my photos? They'd never believe me. In the end, I decided to take a drastic step. I packed up my camera and all my equipment, and I left town. I drove until I was sure I was far away from everything I'd ever known. I stayed in a motel, got a job waiting tables, and tried to forget about my old life. But it was hard. The images of the brides and the dark figure continued to haunt my dreams. And then one night, as I was eating dinner alone in my motel room, I saw him. He was sitting across from me, shrouded in darkness, his eyes boring into mine. For a moment, I was paralyzed with fear. Then something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him drive me crazy. I stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out into the darkness. "Show yourself," I whispered. "Show me who you are." And then he was gone, vanished like smoke in the wind. When I turned back, there was nothing there. No sign that he'd ever been there at all. Was it the stress getting to me? Had I finally lost my mind? I didn't know, but something told me that this wasn't the end. I moved back to town a few months later, ready to start my life over. I found a new apartment, got a new job, and tried to put the whole ordeal behind me. But it wasn't easy. The people in my hometown were whispering. They knew about the dark figure in my pictures, and they wanted answers. Then one day, as I was walking down the street, I saw a familiar face. It was one of the brides whose wedding I'd photographed. She was standing in front of the bakery, looking at the pastries in the window. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I talk to her? Should I run? My heart was pounding in my chest and my hands were shaking. Finally, I decided to go for it. I walked up to her and introduced myself. She looked at me for a moment, then a slow smile spread across her face. "Thank you," she said. "I knew you'd come back." I was confused, but before I could ask any questions, she turned and walked away. As I watched her go, I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. What did she mean? Why had she thanked me? That's when I saw it. Behind her, just outside the frame of the bakery window, was the dark figure, shrouded in darkness, his eyes fixed on me. He was closer now than he'd ever been before. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I stumbled back, knocking over a trash can. The sound of metal hitting the pavement seemed to echo in my ears. And then he was gone, vanished without a trace. I don't know what happened to him or why he was haunting my life, but I do know that I can't keep running. I have to confront this thing, whatever it is, and put it to rest. I don't know how, but I will find a way. Because I know one thing. He's not just haunting me. He's haunting the brides too. And I won't let him hurt them anymore.